Thank you very much for joining on this Friday as we emerge from Purim into Erev Shabbos in Yerushalayim. It is other walled cities as well. I'm not sure where they are, but famously Yerushalayim. It is Purim. They celebrate Purim in Yerushalayim today, Shoshan Purim, and reflecting on the mitzvah pact and a very fun aspect of Purim, the four famous mitzvahs, beginning with Mem, Megillah, Mishter, Matanas Le'evyonim, Mishloach Manos, listening to the Megillah, having a Purim Suda, giving gifts of money to people who need that money, and gifts of food to other people, to our community, and all of these mitzvahs are such a high, and we go into the Sedra that we will be reading on Shabbos, that is Tzav, and it starts with the unusual use of the word, the root Tzadi Vav Hey, which is the same root as mitzvah, as opposed to Emor or Daber, we have Tzav. And Rashi comments on this. That's going to be in Vayikra chapter 6. Verse 2, Tzav es Aaron, command Aaron, ein tzav ela loshen zeruz. Command can only be meant to express urging on. Zeruzos is something that one does with enthusiasm, with alacrity, miyad or ladoros, for the immediate moment and for future generations. And I think that it's worth stopping a moment and focusing on this concept that Rashi is conveying, that we've got enthusiasm, Zoris, we've got immediacy, and we've got future generations. And if we look at the first 6 Pesukim of the Sedra of Tzav, we can come to understand how this is such a unique way of conveying the messages that come from the use of the word Tzav. Just to reflect a moment on the word mitzvah, that perhaps we've grown up with, or we might think, if we were called to translate it, we'd say it means a good deed, it means a commandment. But the actual word is really so full of different nuances. But really, I think that it just has this sense of propelling us forward, that if something is a mitzvah, we come to a point where we have that impetus, that we get the help, because very often it will involve us in effort. In this case, Rashi points out that because it involved in chesar and kiss, that it involved, which is an unusual way of saying it, that it was an expensive requirement to bring the offerings, generally to bring the korbanos, but especially the ola offering, which is described in these first 6 Pesukim. And we need a little bit of encouragement to put our hands in our pockets and dig, however deep it is, and take it out and spend it for this. So that is the practical reason why we've got the tzav, the tziva, that's that miracle and magic of mitzvah. And so that, remembering that, again, this word mitzvah is also connected to the Aramaic root savta, which is binding together. And instead of thinking it in terms, thinking of a mitzvah in terms of good deeds or commandments, it is really something that binds us to Hashem. We have, as it were, 613 ways of connecting to Hashem that we use, and we are the ones who benefit by it. And I think that when we tap into that energy, then when we do a mitzvah, we can be on our couch and we actually do not necessarily feel particularly in the mood at that point to go and do it. But once we get up and we start doing it, we, if not always, mostly know that we are the ones who are getting the benefit. So yes, we have to put that effort and investment of energy in, and investment of other kinds as well, in this case money, but we are really the ones who benefit. So when this word tzav is used here, we are getting that message that Aaron and his sons and the Kohanim, they are being fired up, literally, and we'll be talking about the fire on the altar very shortly, but also enthused, and they are doing something that they are doing something with passion, with zeal, and this is really can be cultivated because you're swimming against the tide, because it is in the mitzvah is involving you in effort, and it's not always easy. In fact, very often it's not easy, but it is the most worthwhile thing that we can do, and the more we do it, the more we realize it. But this concept of zerizos, we uh, we can tap into it. Apart from the word of the Torah, the word of Tzav, we also have a genetic inheritance, and we learn it from Avraham Avinu and go back to the Sedra of Beresh, not the Sedra, the book of Bereshis, and the chapter 22, verse 3. And this is the chapter where Avraham Avinu, Avraham our father, is commanded to take his son, his beloved only son from his wife Sarah, Yitzchak, to the Akedah. And the Pasuk says, that's chapter 22, verse 3, Vayashkem Avraham baboker vayachavash es chamora. And Avraham woke up early in the morning, and he saddled his ass. And on Vayashkem, and he woke up early, Rashi comments, Nizdares lemitzvah. He was enthusiastic about doing this mitzvah. Vayachavash, and he saddled, hu va'atzmo, he saddled his own ass. V'lo tziva le'achad min be'avadav. He didn't command one of his servants. She'a'ava mekalkeles hashura, because love breaks the boundary. So here we see in Avraham Avinu two lessons, two roles. This is a role model that we follow forever, that he gets up, he doesn't delay, and he saddles his own ass. And this is showing, he could have delegated it to his servants, but he is so enthusiastic to fulfill the command, the mitzvah of Hashem, that he does it himself. And we have this positive example that we follow here, and we see it in the negative as well, when Paro is chasing after the Jewish people, when he said they can go, and he is then going to chase them, follow them to the Yam Suf, to the Reed Sea. And it says also there that he saddled his own ass. And so we have the opposite, that sino mekalkeles es hashura, that his hatred and his negative energy propelled him to not ask his servants, but to carry out the relatively menial task of saddling his own horse. So this Zoris, this first point that Rashi informs us, that when we have the word Tzav, it is talking about the enthusiasm. We can also learn it from Avraham Avinu, from the episode of the Akedah. And then we have this concept of miyad, which means immediately. And this is the lesson that we learn from here, that when we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, even if it doesn't have to be done at that very moment in theory, but we want to perform it as soon as possible. We will not have our to-do list and tick off whatever other tasks we have and then do the mitzvah. Because as I think we've all discovered, that when you do that, you stand a very good chance of not being able to do the mitzvah, because before you know it, the time frame will have elapsed, even if it wasn't very limited at the start. And what is really important to you, and this is a great truth of life, you do as soon as you possibly can. You prioritize that. And this concept of immediacy is relevant, not this particular year, because on other years, when there isn't an extra Adar, we can read the Sedra of Tzav just before Pesach. And there is a saying that is associated with mitzvah and with Pesach, and that is mitzvah haba liyodcha al tachmitzena. that a mitzvah that comes to your hand, and I think as well we've got this feeling with the words mitzvah haba liyadcha, that when a mitzvah comes your way, it's like a gift, it's like an opportunity. So just as if you have this very rare opportunity to do something or see something, then you certainly won't pass it up because you don't know when that opportunity is going to come your way again. So this is with any mitzvah, and this concept al tachmitzena comes from the root chometz. So I think that we could translate it as don't let it rise, don't let it become chometz. And chometz is the symbol of, slow and easy wins the race. The yeast, you can't hurry your dough when you've activated your yeast. You have to be patient. You have to just slowly watch it, hopefully double in size, and be rather upset if it doesn't. And this is something that, although has a particular relevance to Pesach, but equally it is relevant throughout as well, that at any time of year, a mitzvah that comes to our hand, don't let the opportunity become chometz. And this is what Rashi is saying, that he is saying miyad, which is immediately. And so that's the second aspect of the Rashi, miyad. And then the third one is ledoros, for generations. And it is somewhat challenging, really, especially as we are going to look at a Sedra that's talking about korbanos, the offerings that were brought in the service of the Beis Hamikdash. And we, at the moment, we read about them in the Torah, but they're not part of our daily lives. We don't have the opportunity to experience them. So it's something that we have to try to understand, that Rashi will say, particularly on this topic, that it is for generations. Things, for example, in the Aseres Hadibros, honoring one's parents, not taking Hashem's name in vain, keeping Shabbos. These are things that we can readily see that they are for doros, they are for generations. But of all places to say about the korbanos, about the Ola offering, about a very interesting ceremony called Terumat Hadeshen, lifting up of the ash. So how is that for generations? So when we look at the Pesukim, I think that we will be able to see the meaning, on the one hand, of the base level of the actual korbanos and the avoda, the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So we have the practical details here that perhaps are not relevant now, but please God, when Mashiach comes, these are details that we will have to know. And so we've got we have that concept, but we can also look at it more broadly as themes that emerge from the mindset that we need to have when we are bringing the korbanos, that we can apply ledoros, we can apply at all times of our life. So just to carry on reading, this is now Pasuk 2. Zos Toros Tzav Aaron ve'esbanov, command Aaron and his sons, Lema, saying, Zos Toros ha'ola. This is the law of the burnt offering. Hi ha'ola al mokta al hamizbeach. It is the ola offering that stays on the flame. Kol halayla ad haboker, all night until the morning. The eish hamizbeach tukad bo, and the fire of the mizbeach shall be kept aflame. And the beautiful way of understanding this is that the fire of the avoda, the fire of the service, the fire which is the warmth, which is a symbol for the zerizos, for the passion and the enthusiasm, that has to stay on the altar. And I think that it's particularly relevant when we think back to last week, to Shabbos before Purim, where we read Parsha Zachor, we mentioned that Amalek is this representative of coldness, of a worldview that doesn't recognize Hashem, His mastery, and the fact that we have to have this sense of awe of Hashem and let it imbue our lives with the direction, with this way of behavior that is going to help us reach higher levels. And the coldness of Amalek is contrasted that with the warmth that we have on the Mizbeach. And this is something that we don't need to have an actual Mizbeach, we don't need to have an actual fire, but this is a metaphor for an attitude of passion, of love for the mitzvahs. And the concept of ledoros, the concept of having this passion for generations, if we learn the halachas, and the words in the Sedra, the Rashi, the Torah Shebal Peh, the oral tradition around the korbanos, it is considered as if we actually offered these up. And I think that that's another way to understand how how reading about the korbanos and reading about the Olah, it is for generations, because we keep that knowledge alive, and we also understand that it's about coming closer to Hashem. And when it was appropriate, when there was a Beis HaMikdash, the way that was achieved was through korbanos. And now we have different forms of avodah that we use instead of the korbanos. So we talk about tefillah, for example. Tefillah is avodah shebalev, the work of the heart. And it's about having this communication with Hashem, this dialogue with Hashem. And at the time of the Beis HaMikdash, this was brought about through the medium of the korbanos. But now we think of it we're using different tools. We have the tool of tefillah, we have the tool of gemilas chasodim, we have the tool of Torah study specifically of the korbanos, but Torah study in general as well. And so these are the ways that these are what we bring on our mizbeach. And we are in a situation, and while we anticipate the coming of Mashiach, we daven for the coming of Mashiach. Until that point, we are able to tap into that energy of the korban, and we can reap the same rewards. And then when we continue the psukim, v'lovash haKohen mido, the Kohen shall put on his fitted linen tunic, mido bad, his fitted linen tunic, or michnasei bad, and his trousers of linen, yilbash al basaro, he will wear on his flesh, v'herim es hadeshen, and he will raise the ashes, asher tochal ha'esh, that the fire will consume, es ha'olah, the olah offering, al hamizbeach, v'somu eitzel hamizbeach, and he shall place it next to the mizbeach. So, again, you can turn around and say, how is that ledoros? How is that for generations? We've got the dress requirements of the Kohen. We've got the fact that he's got to lift up. He takes a shovel full of ash after the olah has been completely burned and now reduced to ashes, and he then puts it next to the mizbeach. He doesn't even take it outside the camp. He doesn't complete the job. It's not like he's taken out the rubbish. So what can we learn for generations from that particular aspect? So there's this idea that we'll carry on. So the Soma Eitzel HaMizbeach, to put it next to the Mizbeach. This is verse 4 now, chapter 6 of Vayikra. And Ufashat es bagodov, he shall remove his garments, v'lavash begodim acherim, v'hotzi es hadeshen el mechutz lamachaneh, and he will take out the ashes to outside of the camp, el makom tahor, to a pure place, v'ha'esh al hamizbeach tukad bo, and the fire on the mizbeach will remain a flame on it, lo sichbeh, it shall not be extinguished. And here we have, first of all, the fact that the ashes of the korban have a purpose. They are pointed out, they are part of this ceremony, that no part of the korban goes to waste. There is an intrinsic value, even in the ash, even in something that is considered devoid of all life. If something is reduced to ashes, what it's unrecognizable. You can't. I think perhaps with DNA one might be able to trace something, but generally it is almost complete destruction. But as part of the avoda, as part of the service of Hashem, we can learn that there is nothing that goes to waste. Everything has a purpose. And the Kohen lifts this up and elevates the ash. So even something like ashes can, in the service of Hashem, have value. And this is a wider application. It's not just referring to the ritual that was performed here, but it's something in our own lives that when we are doing a mitzvah, there is no wasted element. So perhaps if you walk to visit somebody and they're not in or they're not well enough to see you, your walking there has not been wasted. It is part of the mitzvah. It is part of your efforts to fulfill a command, to fulfill a mitzvah of Hashem, to help somebody else feel better. And there is an intrinsic worth. There is nothing in a mitzvah that goes to waste. And this is something that we can see from this lifting up of the ashes. And the fact that the Kohen is the one who performs this very menial sounding ceremony. It sounds like really clearing up the mess. You've got to take the ashes. First of all, you lift it up, and then you take the rest of the ashes outside of the camp, and he has to change his clothes. And somebody pointed out that, you know, in the sort of very posh restaurants where they have the sous chef and the top chef and the middle chef and the maitre d', and everybody's got different uniforms. And there are different people who are carrying out all of these functions. But when it comes to the avoda, then we have the Kohen, and we consider him the priestly class. He is an elevated member of, you know, although we all of Yisrael have opportunities to excel, and people who are born Kohanim are put in that situation by Hashem, but there isn't a special uniform or a special person for that job. The Kohen himself is going to be busy, and then he will have to change his clothes, so in case they're dirty, and it wouldn't then be inappropriate for him to carry out the avoda in those clothes. But we have this idea that every part of the avoda, and the Kohen it's not beneath his dignity. He will do it. He will take out the ashes, and he may change his clothes, but it's the same person who's carrying out all of these functions. You don't need to have this sort of thinking that you've got to have your top level and then your second level, who the person on the second level does the less enticing, appealing, less demanding tasks. Every task has a purpose, is part of the avoda, and is valued as part of that avoda. And I think that when we're seeing how the concept of korbanos, the particular rituals that are associated with the korbanos, can have a wider application, I would like to bring the threads together by looking at a beautiful Rashi and going back to Avraham Avinu and our spiritual forebear and our father, from whom we continue to be inspired. And this is actually at the end of the Akedah, so it's in Bereshit chapter 22, Pasuk 13. And this is when Hashem has told Abraham he must not sacrifice his son, he must not use the knife on his son, who is Yitzchak, who is bound on the Mizbeach. And the Pasuk says, Vayisa Abraham es Einov, and Abraham lifted up his eyes, Vayar, and he saw Vahine Ayel Achar, There was another ram afterwards, Nechaz Basfa, caught in the thicket, Bakarnov with its horns. Vayelech Avraham, and Avraham went, Vayikach es ha'ayil, and he took the ram, Vayalehu la'ola, and he brought it up as a burnt offering, Tachas beno, literally under his son or instead of his son. So on this Tachas beno, Rashi says, Tachas beno, me'achar shekosov veyalehu la'ola, after it was written that he brought him up as a burnt offering. Umahu tachas beno. What does tachas beno refer to? Al kol avoda she'asa mimenu hoya mispalel. On every part of the avoda of bringing this ram as an olah, Avraham was praying, Va'omer, and saying, Yehi rotzen shetehei zu ke'ilu hi asuya bivni. May it be your will, Hashem, as if every part of this offering was as if it had been performed with my son. And so this brings us back to this idea of korban, which is getting close to Hashem, and Hashem does not want human sacrifice. This is something that was made so clear with the Akedah, that Abraham was told not to harm his son in any way. But it's this desire to bring ourselves to the closest point of Hashem and to sanctify every part of our avodah, our service to Hashem, and just really see it as if we are just in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, as they brought the animals and the animals went on the mizbeach, that we with our lives, we devote our lives, not as a human sacrifice, but as a life, as a Kiddush Hashem. And there was a very beautiful song, Bilvovi Mishkan Evne, and we've mentioned it before, but I think it's so appropriate here. In my heart, I will build a Mishkan. And then it carries on. Karban akriv lo es nafshi, and as a korban I will bring to him my nefesh. And it is this closeness of relationship, this desire to perform the mitzvahs, like we had at the beginning when we talked about Tzav, this idea of Zoris miyad oladoros. And when we can use the words of the Torah, when we can think back to the way that the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash was supposed to be performed and apply that to the way that we carry out our mitzvahs today, we are able to achieve a closeness with Hashem and an elevated way of living that only the Torah can show us exactly how to do that. And so, wishing everybody a very good Shabbos, and thank you very much for listening, and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.